Hello everyone, I am Bradley Sward, Associate Professor of Computer and Information Science at the College of DuPage in Glen Ellen, Illinois. And this video today is going to take a drag and drop look at GameMaker Studio version 2.3, and we are going to make the game Pong. And so the game Pong, everyone knows Pong, right? So here is a graphical representation of that. Everyone except for a little kid way back when I worked at GameStop. They're like, there's no such game as Pong. I'm like, this was this was many years ago at this point already. And they go, well, yep, of course there's a game called Pong. Just because it doesn't go out for modern systems doesn't mean that it never existed, or it doesn't exist in various forms, because there are lots of games out there that use this kind of gameplay element, just basically soccer, or any sport where you're trying to, or any kind of game where you're trying to, basically push a ball past anybody else, or just basically have conflict. I mean, just it's such a simple game for 1972, 1973, and of course, in today's modern world, everything's going to take a more modern take on these kind of things. So what kind of elements do we need to make up this game? So sometimes, like in this case, it's relatively simple. As you can imagine, as the games become more complicated, you're not always going to have 100% understanding up front of what goes into the game. But today we're lucky. So we have a human-controlled panel, or paddle. I'm going to do a one-player mode just to show you guys how AI works, and just to show you how if statements work when it comes to that. We're going to have a human-controlled paddle we're going to put on the left. We're going to have an AI-controlled paddle, God bless it, that I'm putting on the right. Obviously, you see the ball. You see a scoring for the left player, scoring for the right player. And one thing you don't see is the ball needs a way to bounce. And so we're going to have to actually create objects for the ball to bounce off of, and actually write one line of actual GameMaker language code, since or maybe the things have changed. But there is no bounce functionality inside of the drag and drop, but there is in code. So that's where we're going today. And so I haven't created anything using GameMaker Studio just yet. This is a brand new, fresh workspace. And so we're ready to kind of just work out the details. Okay, so let's start working on sprites. I'm going to create a sprite over here for the player paddle. Okay, and so the thing is, and again, I'm using a unique name for everything. This is for my drag and drop course. This is for 2D game development, so this might be newer to you guys. I'm using _SPR so that every every resource that goes into the tree here has a unique name, so GameMaker doesn't have a fit. And so I'm going to be making this game in 720p resolution. So I don't know, it's like I can never figure out what kind of settings to make for this. 400 by 175? Let's see what that looks like in, I mean, is that too big? Is that too small? You can go ahead and find and tweak that to your heart's content, you game designers out there. Me as the humble game programmer, I just want to get it done. I just want to get something in there just so we can start practicing and getting things going. So I do want to make sure I go in here and just give this thing a graphic. I'm going to create it red. You can do whatever you want. There's nothing in this part of this that means anything when it comes to gameplay. And so I'm just going to give this a little bit of a border so see what's happening. Nope, I need one more frame pixel here. And just for the sake of this, I'm going to make it red on red here. I'm going to use letter keys, W. I can make this a little bigger of a brush. W, so the user knows that they're going to press the W key to go up. And I'm going to use S to go down. This is the extent of my art skills. Look at that. I made it human readable. And so I have W and S. And one last thing that we need to do is go back into the sprite, and for all of the bouncing and all of the everything to work out, I need to center this thing middle center, and I'm going to lock it just so I don't accidentally change it. You absolutely need this, or just things aren't going to work right when we go to play this later on. So I have W for up, S for down, and the center point is exactly centered. And I used 40 by 175, but as long as you middle center this thing, it could be whatever you want. And so now what I'm learning with GameMaker 2.3 is that if you modify the sprite sizes and stuff like that from anywhere, it affects the collision mask. Notice this did not get updated with that. So I have to go in and manually do this and say, okay, and just fill in the whole sprite. And you'll see it turns gray as you go, or little dots change in as you're changing these things, 174. And now it's all grayed in because now that's the bounding box that is the entire sprite image. It's weird. I don't know if it's a bug. I imagine it's a bug in the 2.3, and I hope they fix that. And if it's not, then you just have to put that into your process. That you have to remember every time I change something, I got to go back. Okay, so that's the player paddle. I'm going to duplicate this for the AI paddle, computer paddle. 9 o'clock. Oh, there we go, computer paddle sprite. And the only difference is I just don't want the player to know that they're, you know, like W and S means nothing for this paddle image. So if I edit the image, I just go back in and I fill in, I believe I use that red. There we go, and just get rid of that. That's it. That's all there is to it, to the computer paddle. Center sprite, collision mask, full image, and there we go with that. So now the last main image is a ball. Create a ball, or create a sprite, get a ball image. And I'm going to make this, whatever again, I'm going to make it 40 by 40. Apply, go in and edit it. I'm going to make it a circular ball. Maybe add a little grayer of an outline or something like that. Just have a little fun with it. There we go, something like that. And the same kind of rule applies where I got to do a middle center. Everything needs to be centered so that all the collisions are handled correctly, all the bounces are handled correctly, and everything is good to go. Okay, so I've got my ball, I've got my paddles, and then let's say the one last thing we need to worry about is a wall, the top and the bottom walls. So I'm going to create them just real quick here, wall sprite, and I'm just going to set up a size of 720 for the width and 40 for the height. And then just go in and since this is going to be off screen, I'm going to make it that purple that you know, just so if I accidentally see it on the screen, then I know that I'm supposed to move it around a little bit. And so there we go. For this one, I don't touch the well, we need to probably touch the collision mask, but we don't touch the centering because for that it doesn't matter when the collision occurs. So we've got automatic. I got to go back in because I changed the sprite settings again to make this a full image. I don't know why this is so, but it is what it is. And so there we go. So I've got my 4 sprites. We'll fix up the font later because we were talking about the scoring. We'll use a font for that, but we'll set that up in a little bit. We have the basics right now to get going. And once we get the objects in the room, I'll take a pause, and then you won't notice it. But then we'll come back and start filling in the gameplay. So, okay, we have our sprites. Let's talk about filling in our objects. I definitely want a human paddle. I'm going to use the human paddle sprite. Player paddle, right? I'll stay consistent. Player paddle, and then I'll duplicate this for computer paddle, and then just go in and change sprite that gets applied because I have player paddle. I'm going to use computer paddle. All right, sprite. All right, and the ball. And again, remember, my way of doing things is, you're like, why don't I have OBJ or something? That I use the underscores for everything but object types. Because again, unique names. And if objects are the only ones that I don't add any extensions to, then it's unique. and I never have to worry. But for everything else, fonts and shaders and sounds and you name it, I'm gonna put an underscore something behind it so that I know that it's that kind of resource as opposed to an object. Okay, so we have our ball paddle. Oh, yeah, the wall object. Real quick then, one more. Okay, and so we have all the objects at solidity, all this. Oh yeah, the wall should be solid. Well, actually, don't touch it now, and then you'll see why we need to make it. We'll use it later. But now we have all of our objects, and now the last step here, just getting things into the room, is to set up the room. And I'm going to call it Pong Gameplay Room underscore room, right? That's okay. And I go in, and I'm going to change these settings. So it's 720p, oops, which is 1280 by 720. Yep. And so the room settings, so this is how the window is going to be set in 720p, glorious 720p resolution. I would use 1080 if we were using, if I was doing this for real, but just to have this on the screen so I can show you stuff, 720p works. And so now, interestingly enough here, like to center things, if I make this 640, and I make this 360, and I drag the ball in, you can see I can completely center the ball on the screen. And I picked these settings because these numbers, these values, are half of the width and height of the window. And so then, yep, the ball is exactly centered. And so if I change this up to maybe like 20 or something like that, I can drag the player paddle over to here. I can drag the computer paddle over to there. And now they're vertically centered as well, but now they're horizontally centered, or horizontally set up equidistant from the edge of the screen because I changed this to a grid setting that was a multiple of 1280. The 720. They pick these resolutions for a reason, for multiples, and there are reasons behind why is it 720p, why is it 1280 by 720, why is it 1920 by 1280. There are good reasons which we won't get into here. And so the wall objects, oops, I made the wall, nope, accident number one. Let me go back into the sprite. Because I was thinking 720p, I meant 1280. I meant for the whatchamacallit here, for the width of the thing. And I can actually scale this. Show you that I can scale this out, and it's not going to change anything because it's a purely purple color. So you just got to make sure you unclick the maintain aspect ratio, and then I can apply that, and now I don't have to do anything more. Or maybe I do. Let me see. Actually, let me see if I have to change. Nope, I don't have to change anything in there, but I might have to change everything inside of the room. So let's see. I go back into the room. Nope, there it is. And let's see. And so now I have to play with the Y settings. Just to make sure I put everything, there we go, right at the top. And then I create another one, and I put it right at the bottom. And they're not on the screen. And you'll be able to see that if I run the game. And I show this. And now here I go. Here's my game. And you can't see anything purple on either end because those objects are just off the screen, but they're still in our game world, so they're going to have collision effects and everything just the same. So outside of setting up the scoring, we have our objects in place, and we're ready to go to start adding some gameplay elements. Okay, so I guess, what to start with. Everyone might have a different opinion. Let me put this back so you don't think everything's not centered correctly. You can kind of see, as long as it's a multiple of everything, 40, grid settings of 40. You can see everything looks good here on this screen. Okay, so let's handle the player paddle first. So depending on where you're coming from, we might not have had keyboard events yet, but I want to be able to move up and down, and I'm using W and S keys for that. So you have to watch out because there's 3 different key press events. There's key pressed, down, and up, and I don't know why there isn't the released. I don't know why they don't have key released since they have all the others. There's 4 different states. So key pressed is the moment I press the key and only for that one moment. So the key press event happens one time when you press the key. And afterwards, every frame after, as long as you're holding down the key, you get a key down event. And then technically you get a key released the moment you release it. And then every moment after, when their key, like right now, every single key is up on my keyboard because I'm not touching anything on my keyboard. So a lot of times you have to just understand the difference between key pressed and key down. And so like if you hit key pressed, I'm gonna have to jam this thing like it's the old school track and field video game, arcade game. You know, trying to move around like that. Like every time I hit that, I'm moving 6 pixels or something like that, as opposed to this where all I have to do is very gently press the up key, key down, letter W, key down W, and I'll be able to say, okay, let's move. Go into my toolbox, find out which drag and drop element it is, and it's weird. You're like jump to point because I'm not going to be setting speeds. I'm not going to be doing collision events. So I will be doing a collision event, but just saying like I'm going to be doing this jump to point, and everything is going to be relative to my position. And I'm going to, because I'm not going to say, hey, let's move to the upper left-hand corner of the screen. I want to just move relative to where I am right now on the screen. So, and why? If I'm pressing W and I'm going up, we have to understand that up in GameMaker is a negative Y value. It's the complete opposite of the way mathematics is taught in, in normal math class. The Y-axis is reversed in GameMaker. So the x-axis is totally fine. It's just the y-axis is reversed. So if I want this thing to move up, I have to say -5. So let's try it. I press W, say I'm holding it down, and I can go off to infinity. And that's because there's a wall up there that there is no collision event for. But let's finish the movement before we worry about the collisions. But I can say here, if I duplicate this and I say key down, and I say letter, and I say S, what the heck is this? Just save it, whatever. I don't know what that is. That's okay. And say, okay, +5. Now I obviously should be able to move around with both keys. You know, W, S, and now, okay. I think we're happy so far. Okay. So now the final thing to handle. We're just creating a very simple Pong game is what to do if there's a collision between the wall and the paddle. And so I'm going to do things a little differently than I normally do, just because in a classroom setting I can discuss things a little more in depth than I necessarily can in a video here. But I can say if the wall, let's see, can I go to room previous? I'm just curious what drag and drop elements I have access to. And so in this case, all I can say here is I'm going to jump to point, and there's a thing in GameMaker. Let's just try it out. GameMaker keeps track of where your object was in the previous game frame. This is not relative. This is absolute. And now you can see that my character is bound to the screen. Because what happens is when you're moving around and you're just blindly going up and down every keyframe, if there's a collision, if the sprite of the wall is colliding with the sprite of the player paddle, I'm saying, okay, GameMaker, you are maintaining where I was in the previous frame prior to my collision. Go ahead and do that. Go back to my previous point. And now the only thing you might notice is, depending on your speed, I used 5. I'm just going to use 11 real fast just for an example. And I'm just using this so I don't have to write code for you guys, but a move contact solid is easier. But you'll notice if I do this, or maybe you don't notice, but the larger the number I use, and maybe the prime number or something like that, I use 53. You'll see that, this one will definitely show it. You'll see that, or not. Am I just picking the wrong numbers? 86. 86 has got to work, right? Oh, I'm using the wrong key. I got to go down, not up. So there you go. You can see that because of the way that we're using discrete movements every single game frame, that it's not pushing its way to the bottom all the way out. And there's ways to, of course, there's move contact solid, there's move outside solid. These are all more complicated things to use, and there's no move contact solid drag and drop element. So I'm going to stay away from that for the time being. So just to say, like, as long as you center everything and you use something that's a multiple of 40 for the speed, you will not ever see this issue, because every movement will put me right up against the boundary line. And the other thing is, if you don't necessarily care about that, then the other thing to do is just move the walls in the screen. Just move these up a little bit so the character can go slightly off screen, and you'll never notice that. Like, you will never notice, because that pixel boundary will never be visible. So I say, if I just move this up slightly bit here and move this down slight a bit, no matter what speed, now my character, my player object, can go slightly off the screen either way, and you'll never notice that little boundary depending on how you make this, how fast you make the speed. So maybe this is a little more realistic. Whatever one, I'm going to go with this one, because it just shows that you can go a little bit off the screen, and it makes it a little more challenging because it's not just slam down. You have to like maybe stop there. See, there's a little more skill than the no skill that normal Pong uses. Okay, so there's our paddle. I think we're happy with that. Now we'll do AI in a little bit. Let's move the ball around first. Okay, so the ball, we can say when the game first starts up, or when the ball is first created, I just got to remember how to do this with drag and drop anyway. Movement, pick a set point direction, set direction fixed. Nope, that's not the one. I want set direct. Nope, I don't want set direction variable. Which one do I want? Set random direction. There we go. So pick one of the two, left or right. And then, which is interesting, that's kind of a newer thing with the newer version 2 of GameMaker, is this just sets direction. That's not the speed. The speed has not been set. So to change the speed, I also have to do that and say, in the direction I'm going, change the speed to something like 12. And now you can see it already went, because for whatever reason it starts this on the other screen every single time. There's no way for me to change that. You can see that the ball started in the middle and it went to the right. And what's interesting, if you run this every single time, you can bet your friends, which way is it going to go? And you can be like, you would think it's a 50-50 shot. But because of the way GameMaker uses random number generation, every time you run this game, it's going to go to the right, go to the right, go to the right. So I don't like that. So let me find you just drag this in on create, this little randomize, and now you have a real 50-50 shot. And now you can see it went to the left. If you don't put randomize in, the ball will always go, every random number generation will go to exactly the same place. All right, so that sets that up. But what I want to do, like you're saying, like, wouldn't it be nice if there was a little tiny delay before this all? And that's where the idea of an alarm timer comes in. And the whole idea of an alarm timer is just kind of like an alarm on your phone, the one that you heard when it was 9 o'clock here in my time. It's exactly that. If I will go ahead and I modify this, or if I modify this, move this over, change event, and make this an alarm timer. Kind of like, at 9 o'clock, scream out, make a sound. I mean, that's the same kind of thing. But in GameMaker, instead of time, like being seconds, time is measured in game frames. So what I want to do instead in the create event, and this is like an alarm, it's just what do I do if the alarm goes off? But if I don't program the alarm to ever go off, all that code will never be activated. There's all this code. So it's just sitting around waiting for an alarm to go off. So I just have to set this thing here and say, okay, set alarm 0, and I'm going to set it to 120, which is a 2-second delay. Nowadays, GameMaker 2.3, every game runs by default at 60 frames per second. You can modify that in the settings, but I don't think that's relevant to today. So a countdown timer of 120 is 2 seconds. So now set the timer. And the interesting thing, there's 12, I think there's still 12 alarms per object. I've never used more than 3 in my life, maybe 4 once or twice, about having alarms with objects. So I don't understand why there are so many alarms with everything, with everything going on. But now when I run the game, there will be a slight delay. And now you notice it's not already moving left or right. And so about 2 seconds from there, and there it goes. And that's perfect. The create event just sets the timer, and then the alarm timer is what actually sets everything in motion so that the motion literally can occur. Okay, so now let's handle collision events. Let's handle the player first, and then we can handle everything else. So a lot of this is going to go in the ball. You will notice there's a lot of times where you're asked, where should I put these events? And sometimes it's very obvious when it comes to things like this. It's like, well, this is the ball, so the events should be handled inside of the ball. But what happens if you have interactions? That's a big deal. When the ball collides with the paddle, when the ball collides with the other paddle, when the ball collides with a wall, when the ball goes outside of the room. Like, where do you want to put this? And the rule of thumb is just as long as you have a consistent way of doing things, then you can go with this. I'm going to pretty much put everything in the ball today, and with collision events and everything else. But the one thing you want to make sure you do for future, hopefully you're watching this video and actually listening to this, is you want to make sure you don't put like a collision event in both objects, especially if you're destroying and doing all sorts of things. It's a complex behavior. Put all of that into the one collision event wherever you choose between the ball or the paddle, because you could have some really strange effects, especially if you destroy an object on collision. Then you might not actually hit the collision event for the other object, and so the ball might pass right through an object, or there's a lot of weird things that can occur. So for best practices, when you have collision events, handle the entire response to the collision in one of the 2 objects. And so here I'm going to say when the ball collides with the player paddle. Let's just do it now. So there's 2 different ways that things can go. You notice in a real Pong game, the ball can bounce many, many different ways off of a paddle. But to keep things simple from our end, the ball can bounce one of 2 ways. The ball can either bounce diagonally up to the right. Looking at our game here, you won't be able to see my finger moving, but you probably can see me doing like this. If the ball hits over here, the ball can either go this way off the paddle, or it can go this way off the paddle. And it all depends on the relative Y positioning. That's why we centered everything earlier, so that the ball and the paddle, we can have a resolution, a differential, to determine, do I want the ball to bounce up or do I want the ball to bounce down? And so coming back to here with this collision event, now we can handle an if statement, and say if variable, if expression, if this, that, if that, whatever. And I want to say if, and I want to say I am the ball, and if my Y value, ball's Y value, Y, and now this is where things get a little weird because of the way things work out here, but I want to say if my Y value of the ball is less than the Y value of the player paddle. And so you can put player paddle dot Y. Those of you with more experience know that this isn't a catch-all, but this is good for now. And so what this means is if the Y value of my ball, and if you really want to put ball dot in here, you can just, for your own clarity, you can do that as well. You don't have to. But if I want to say, okay, if the ball's Y position, that's a dot, that's a period. This is saying ball is the object and Y is the variable associated with that object. If the ball's Y value is less than the player paddle's Y value, that means the ball is above the paddle. And so I want to say less than, right? If the ball's paddle, oh, never mind. Let me just say, drag and drop. This is how you do it. Sorry, guys. Sorry, everyone. This is why I should have used the expression instead, and it would have been just as fine here. So I can say if the ball's Y value is less than the player's Y value, That's what I was trying to get across with using the less than symbol. But that's saying here, okay, that's perfectly fine. Well, what do I want to do is I want to set the direction. I want to change the direction that the ball goes in. And just for the sake of this right now, I'm just going to say direction is equal to 45. Let's try it out. It might take a little while to get us there. But you can say here, there we go. And there you can see the ball bounce. And it went, and because the ball was above, the ball bounced at a 45-degree angle. And so now, let me make this a little more, God, drag and drop's horrible when it comes to making this visible for you guys. Sorry about all that. I'm doing my best here. But I can say else, if the thing is not less than, well, it's greater than or equal to. So how about I say the direction is equal to 315, which is down and to the right, using the 360-degree scale. So 0 goes to the right, 90 is up, 180 is down, 270 is down, 180 is left, and then 315 is diagonal right and down. And so now that's all there is to it. Right. It only works right now on the player paddle, so every try here, I got a 50-50 shot. There we go, and there it goes. So if the ball can handle each of the two situations, and what I'm going to do here, just real fast here, is I'm just going to change this up to give you a little more variability. So I'm going to say, I'm going to change this to something like this. 25 plus random 40. And I'm going to say 295 plus random 40. Because this game would get really boring really quickly if the ball bounced off at exact angles every single time. So what this is doing is using the random number generator, and since we randomized it earlier, we never know exactly which angle, but I can tell you this is going to be, instead of 45, it's in the range of 25 to 65, and instead of 315, this is in the range of 295 to 335. And of course, there are many different ways to do this, but this is just the way to go about doing it right this moment. Okay, so you can basically copy this, and we have to change this up a little bit. Let's just do it for repetition's sake. Let's go into the paddle, the computer paddle, and do exactly the same thing for the collision event. So I've got player paddle collision probably done. We haven't tested it fully yet, but we're getting closer. And so now if I do a collision with the computer paddle, it's the same kind of thing, but the direction is going to go the opposite ways. But other than that, everything is going to be pretty much the same. So let me show you the expression way of doing things here, instead of showing you in, so this, notice now things are a little different, right? There's a lot less, it looks more like a real line of code than it does the drag and drop element I used a minute ago. So what I can say here is I can say if ball.y is less than, now I got to use computer paddle.y. Let me stretch this out so you can see this a little better. There we go. So if the ball's y is less than the computer paddle's y, then what should I do? I should set the direction. And if that means, again, that the ball is above the paddle, so just think about, you want this thing to go this direction. That is 135 degrees. And then let me find my else again. Else, my direction then goes this way, down and to the left, and that's 225. So let's see. This should, if it hits the paddle, it should go down and to the left here if it goes. Oops. There we go. Let's see. Oops. We didn't handle the collision with that yet. Hold on. We'll get there. Gaming is fun. Okay, so we're getting there. Okay, here we go. Please, please, please. And there it goes. Down and to the left because the ball and the paddle are at equal position, so it hits the else, and then it uses this to set the direction to 225. So let's handle the collision with the wall, and then we can worry about the AI, and then move on to scoring and all that kind of stuff. So let's do that. And for this one, it's a little more complicated, and it's only because GameMaker took away something it needs. If I need the collision with the wall, the ball here, what am I going to do? I am going to, let me see. Bounce. Let me see if they added any bounce. Nope, there's no bounce. we actually have to write a line of code to handle a bounce. Isn't that weird? But anyway, I will digress here, and I will say you need to execute code, drag it in. So you might have seen me write code before, depending on where we're going. And it definitely, if you're in my more advanced class, we write code all the time. That's what programmers do. We write code. Drag and drop is, it's nice and all, but it's definitely not as powerful as anything else. And so what I want to do is this function called move bounce all, and I want to say advanced false. So there we go. Move underscore bounce all underscore all, and then false in parentheses, and then a semicolon. And now the ball should bounce how it needs to off the wall. There we go. Oops. No, it didn't do that. Interesting. And so let me see. Maybe the wall has to be solid. Let me try. That was not expected. I was expecting the ball to, not because it went off the screen or anything, I was expecting it to bounce. I really was. There we go. GameMaker's fun. It went through the wall. Interesting. So maybe, let's see what happens. Let me move these up again so we can actually see the ball coming up to the edge of the screen. That is very odd. Bounces, there's the bounce. Oops. We'll need to get the AI going so that we can test this out. But GameMaker is fun. Like I said, that's why in future videos you will see me using move contact solids. You will see me using all sorts of things because collision detection is easy. Collision response is tricky. And I've never been able to fully figure out GameMaker's collision response. And I know you always go, well, why do you rewrite your own? I go it because it comes out and it gives me a lot more use cases that I don't have to come up with exceptions for. Especially if you've done my platformer video and all sorts of other things. Like, I don't have to think about it. It's already done. And I write my own move slide solid function. There's a lot going on you'll see in future videos. But coming back to this, let's set up the AI so we can at least play the game for more than one bounce to see what's going on. Because right now, I'm not 100% clear as to why the ball doesn't bounce every single time. Okay, so the AI for the ball is very similar to a collision event. Because all I'm doing is checking. I'm just checking. Instead of being on a collision, I need to check every game frame. Is the ball's Y position up above or below me? And if the ball is above me, move up. And if the ball is below me, move down. So it's a very simple if-else structure. Move up if I can, or move down to try to center my position with the ball. That's it. So as AI goes, it's as simple as you could ever imagine. But this needs to occur for game frame by game frame, and that's what step events are. That's what a step event is. And so here I can say, let's bring this back to the other if check, the more verbose if check. I can say if ball.y is less than what am I? I am paddle. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't need to be in the ball. My bad. Hold on, let me see. Doing too much talking and thinking and all this at one time. I need this to be in the computer paddle. Sorry, everyone. Yeah, you can go ahead and erase everything back, or you can leave the step event in. It doesn't hurt anything. But this is in the paddle. Sorry, everybody. And I go in a step event. I'll drag in the if statement, and I can say, okay, if ball.y is less than me, computer paddle.y, okay, if that's the case, then what I want to do is do a move, find a jump to point, and this is where it's tricky. You have to find a y value that is not too easy and not too hard. Because if I make it, if the ball's moving at 12 and I make this thing 12, you will never win. So you have to find a value. I'll use 4 just for the sake of this. And if I want to go up, I got to make it a -4. Because if the ball's y is less than my y, I have to move up to get to it. And if you did it, if you come up with the wrong logic, the paddles will move exactly reverse of what you expect, and then you just fix it. But if it's not, oops, then I want to make sure that it's +4. That's it. You can see it's kind of already kind of shaken, trying to figure out its way, and there we go. That's, oops. The ball doesn't bounce off the stupid wall. I don't understand it. I do not understand. Let me see if I make the ball solid as well. I don't know. This is weird to me. Didn't we change the settings? Oh! GameMaker. No. Hold on. Let's go back into the, let me go into the sprite for this wall setting. No, I set it up to be the full, nope. Oh, GameMaker. That's why it worked for my character, not for its. We changed the sprite settings all those minutes ago. Oh my God, GameMaker, you need to fix this. Seriously. So the bounding box, here, if I make this, you can see the bounding box for our object is only this part. This part here. So yeah, that's why it makes sense. The ball would always bounce off for my guy, and the ball would not bounce off when it hit the AI guy, because the ball would go into here and above here too, because everything was, and go up, and it would just go on forever. Oh my goodness, fix this, GameMaker, please. I need it to be the full image, and now you can see it's dark grayed out for the entire image. Oh, I was having a worry fit there. All those things trying to fix up something that isn't really my fault. But now you can, oh, thank goodness, right? And so you can see 4 was that too easy? And you say, we'll fix this up because that's scoring, right? That's the next thing to do. Was 4 too easy? And so you have to find a balance for the computer paddle here and say, oops, not the paddle sprite, the computer paddle object. And just, you'll have to find a value that fits. So one more time, let's just see. But again, the faster you make the paddle, obviously, the harder the game will be to beat. And so maybe 5, that's weird. 4 would be too easy, 5 would be too hard. Here we go, I think I got one. Nope. Okay. And you can play with angles. There's so many things you can play with. Yeah, I got one, there we go. And then of course, there's no need for it to worry about collision events because the ball will always be staying in the gameplay field. So the AI paddle will never go off the gameplay world here. So that's pretty cool. And so we have ourselves basic movement, and now we handle scoring, and we're going to call it a day. Okay, but again, I'm keeping everything simple for today. We're going to keep the scoring inside of the ball object. The ball is going to be, there's going to be a lot going on inside of this ball. And so we need to keep track of 2 different variables, right? For score, what is the score of the left player and what is the score of the right player? And then of course I'd like to be able to draw that on the screen. So let's just get the basics of that going before we worry about adding to the score, moving the ball back, and doing all the extra things. So in the create event here, we already set a countdown timer, but now we can set up our own GameMaker variables. There's a ton of them in GameMaker that are automatic, as that we've shown with that X previous, Y previous. But I'm going to create one called just left player score, and I'm going to set it equal to 0. And I'm going to set one equal to right player score. Okay, cool, cool. And so those 2 variables don't exist until the create event gets hit. Then afterwards, I can use them like any other GameMaker variable. And so now that I have those things in play here, I'm just going to quickly go in here and I'm going to set up what's called a draw GUI event. There are a lot of different draw events, but the 2 major ones are draw and draw GUI. Draw means according to the world. Draw this object according to where it is in the world. Draw GUI means draw where I tell you according to the window. And GUI, HUD, you guys, and anyone who's played games knows what a GUI is, knows what a HUD is. And so the HUD is always drawn in the same spot on the screen no matter what it's staring at. And that's what I want to do. The score will be rock solid on the screen if I do a draw GUI event. And if we do a draw event also, there's things that go wrong. The ball will disappear and all sorts of weird stuff will happen that I'm not willing to talk about right this instant. So I set up a draw GUI and I can say, let's see, draw Draw text, draw value, draw, yep, I think I just want to draw value. And I can say caption, I don't want a caption, I just want to draw value for left player score. You got to make sure you type everything right, and GameMaker will try to help you as best as it can with that. I say, now where on the screen do I want to put it? I'm not going to worry about it too much just yet. I'm just going to put it at 50-50. We'll fix it up in a minute, but I want to make sure I set the draw color. Just got to draw color, and I want to set that to white because I want to make sure it's a white on a black background. And just for the sake of this, I'm going to add right player score. And I'm going to put this at about 1200, just to have this, oops, I'm sorry, yep, 1250. Just to have this going. And then we'll fix it up and make it look nice. And there you go. You can kind of see the numbers right now. And they don't change once the score takes place, of course, but you can see that we have the basics. So my next step is to make it look nice. Let's pick a font and change the font and center everything nicely, and then add the scoring to it. So to do that, excuse me here, I'm going to go and create a font. Create font. Pick whatever font size, color is your fancy. I'm going to call this scoring font. I'm just going to randomly pick that one. No, that's no fun. I got to pick a fun one. There we go. Oh, no, that's terrible. There we go. Goudy Stout. Default, regular. I'll use 50 size. Oh, that looks beautiful, right? And I can use that as my font now. And so pick whatever. It has no impact whatsoever. It just looks nice. And so I'm going to use my scoring font. And now what I can do here is I set my draw color. I can set my font. I just got to find it. Check color, set draw, set font. And I could say set the font to scoring font. And now on the screen, there's my score. And now I just have to center this thing and find a way to make it look nice. So I'm going to move this over. The left player score is going to be at 100. And let's see, 150 maybe is a little too. I'll try 35. And then for this, I will try 1150, 35. Let's see what that looks like. Sometimes it's just pick and choose till you're happy with it. So let's see. Nope, this one, 1150 is a little too much over, so maybe 1120. Oops, you can't see anything here. Up, up, yeah, about right. I'm not going to get too crazy about that because that's just a little tiny setting. But now you can see that everything is on the screen about equidistant, equidistant from the top for sure. It looks nice. And so now we're ready to adjust scoring. And so to do that, inside of the ball here, they say we need another event, which happens when, under other, you go outside room. And so the room setting is the bounds of the room, which is the 720p resolution. There's intersect boundary, which means if the ball touches the boundary of the room, but we want outside room. And there's only two ways the ball can leave the room. It leaves the room over this way, and it leaves the room over that way. So again, it's another if statement, just determining where the X position of the ball is when the ball leaves the screen. So on outside room event, if my X variable is less than 0, then the right player scored because it went off the screen on the left-hand side. And you can do that here, and I can say right player score. Oops. 1 relative. Because I want to take whatever the current score is and add 1 to it. That's what relative means, add to, as opposed to set. So let's see, now, if I give up a point, well, every time the ball goes off the screen on my end, there we go, I get my 1. I'm surprised it didn't, I guess that's only a one-time thing. And now the other thing is an else, say otherwise, like before here, left player scores. And let's see if I can score real fast. And hopefully pretty fast. There we go. I got my point. And so now that's pretty much that when it comes to scoring. And now what it comes down to is we want to move the ball back to its to its position. And is there a drag and drop for this? Let me see if there's a movement. Jump to start. After all of this is done, I can say here, where do I drag it though? How do I get this? There we go, like this. The drag and drop makes it look funny. That's what this is over here to kind of help you sanity check this. And I say this jump to start is not part of this if statement. This is all separate. If this, do that, else do this, and then jump to start. And I can use jump to start because that's a GameMaker variable that tells me where the object was when I first created it. And GameMaker does it automatically. So I'll let it score on me, and then you'll see it goes right back. There it goes. Isn't that cool? Now the only thing you can imagine is maybe I want to pause the thing, because just like before, maybe let you reacclimate. Uh-oh, don't worry about that. This is an introductory video. Sometimes the ball can get stuck to things, and there's no way out. Thank you, GameMaker. And there we go. Okay, cool. And so the last couple things you have to do to make sure about this is I probably want to stop the speed of the ball, set the speed to 0, and whatever direction it's going, jump to start, set the speed, and then last thing, set that alarm timer back to, I'll give it 90, a second and a half, not 2 seconds this time. And now it'll pause for a second and a half after every time it scores. It'll go right back to where it was. Oops, there it goes. 1.5 seconds. If I can score. I think I got this one. Nope. Getting closer here. Just part of the random number generator, right? You just got to be patient with it. Oh, man. You have to play it out to the edges. Even then, not even then. Oh, come on. Listen, I would definitely be playing with the angles, because the more steep the angles, the harder it is for the computer. There it goes. Cool. It's working. And so now the final step, the final step for this is to determine if the winning state has been made. And to put a little, to put something on and say, good job or bad job or oh no, or whatever it is that happens. And so what we can do here, should we keep that in the outside room event? Where do we put this? Just for the sake of, this is already complicated enough, and drag and drop makes things very complicated. You understand what you're staring at? Like this is there to help. Let me just move this over to a step event. And what I can do here is I can say, with the variable check, the if check, I can say if left player's score is greater than or equal to, I'll say 3 points. If I score 3 or more, and I made it greater than or equal just in case you can score 2 points or crazy number of points or something. But if the left player score is greater than or equal to, the only thing is I got to write code for this, so I got to drag code in. And this, oh, come on. I'll do what I can for you guys here. See what I can do. Come on. There it is. Okay, up here. We need 1 line of code. And so if the left player scores 3, you won the game. So there's a function called show message, and I just want to go, you won. So that's show message underscore parentheses quotation marks, and then a semicolon there. And then I can do another if check afterwards here that's separate and say if right player score is greater than or equal to 3, then you lose. I'm sorry again for the way drag and drop is. I'm doing my best here. Get you guys everything so you can see it. There we go. If left player score is greater than or equal to 3, you won. If right player score is greater than or equal to 3, you lose. So I'll do the lose case. A good tester tests everything out, but I'm gonna lose on purpose. There's 1. There's 2. Here's 3. You lose. And so now every game frame there's no way out, right? Look at it's going back. Oh my God, it's so cute. And so what we need to do is do something. What do you want to do if the game you won? I probably want to restart the game, at least for now. If you're doing this for my homework assignment, you'll probably go back to the main menu because the game's over. Go back to main menu. But for right now, we don't have a menu. So let me just find the, restart room sounds great. Put that in, put this in, make sure it's after the U1. And so the game will start fresh. If you want to end the game, just got to restart the game, exit the game. It has the drag and drop element has a different name than the code. Thank goodness, right? So like say if I win, tell me so, and then when I click OK, restart the game. And if I lose, tell me so, restart the game. And it's up to me to just hit the X when I'm done and finish up. So let me see. So if it works for one, it works for the other, right? So let's see. So I lost. I go back and the game starts over fresh, 0-0. And so there we go. Our entire game is done. While I'm talking, I'll try to score 3 points here. Let's see how hard. Maybe this time, now that I don't need it to score 3 points, I'm going to score 3. But that pretty much covers all the basics of getting just a very simple Pong game going using drag and drop interface. We set up some sprites. We set up a font. We set up a whole ton. We found winning conditions. We got a lot going on here. And so this is great. For those of you who are in my class, I'm going to be setting up the menu system next because your next homework assignment is to take this and then add it in with a main menu. There I go, I won. And then set up a 2-player mode, and just to kind of get the repetition down so you understand how everything works in GameMaker. So you have 3 separate rooms, a 1-player game and a main menu, and a 2-player game. So as always, you can get a hold of me here on YouTube. Send me some comments, hopefully good comments. I'm doing my best. I'm just one person, of course, and I'm under time constraints to get all this done like everybody else in the COVID world here. So if there's anything I can do to make these things better, or if you have any ideas, please comment below or send me an email at swardb@cod.edu. As always, thank you for sticking out with me here and having some fun, making some fun games. See you next time.